Alex Ansary here. This is the second podcast of the day. You can catch the first one over at the Patreon page. You can follow the link down below. I want to thank Clovis for joining. I want to thank those of you that have pledged, all 15. And I encourage you to sign up for any amount per month and have access to the private podcasts. And I also create podcasts that are public. Let me know some of the topics that you'd like to hear me return to, and we'll probably have to do a news update on the Patreon side of things on what's happening in that country, that if I talk about it, the video is demonetized. And when videos are demonetized, I believe it actually threatens the channel's health, rating, ranking, and more things that we don't know about. So when I think about off-the-grid living, there's stages to it. And there's stages to the personal goals that I have. You know, there's stepping stones. Before we get to the top of the stairs, we have to take that first step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. When I started Outside the Box TV, the original title was Exit Vox Populi, till I realized that our society is too dumbed down to realize that Vox Populi is Latin for popular opinion, that I'm talking about exiting the popular opinion. So I went with Outside the Box, and one of the original slogans during the credit roll was, if the systems of control weren't built in a single day, then it'll take longer than a day to dismantle them. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, which in and of itself I believe is Lao Tzu, or either that or Confucius. So the point is that there are steps, baby steps. Now, in the world of ego, there's going to be people that say, what are you doing at the baby step level? You should be over here. One of the things that I have realized early on, not only do I cover content that's unique in and of itself, that isn't necessarily covered by my peers, is that I'm doing it off the grid. And for the last 2 years, I've used the internet and have had access to the internet mostly full-time while living off the grid. And I had some major transportation issues that during many periods living off the grid, I was not able to afford to mediate those issues. So even with some audience help and support here and there along the way, along with YouTube AdSense, I've been able to do something that our ancestors, yours and mine, didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do. And my journey started in 2004 when I started making videos and sharing opinions and ideas that most of the world's population does not support, and in fact attacks. And so it led to my exile, if you will, from Portland, Oregon, and led to me seeking to get away from human beings. But unlike other off-gridders that usually seek to get away from other human beings and spending their time drinking and firing off rounds down dead-end streets, or, into their property or their bank, a bank on their property, hopefully, instead of an actual bank. That's what I meant to say. Right? So we have the freedom to do what we want to do. And it's one thing to be going against the grain and to be outside the box of many cultures, religions, political systems, and for people to scorn you for not picking a side. This is something that exists in the Middle East. This is something that exists in the United States. This is something that exists in Europe. This is a part of the fallen human condition. Either pick a side or be crucified, either verbally or physically, depending on what that society will allow during that particular day and age. Sometimes people wonder where this society is going, whether it's going to go from verbal, right, crucifixion, to the idea of the lynch mob being a little bit more accepted in today's society. So we are moving into dangerous terrain. And you know what's needed? More courage. More courage is needed to continue speaking, to continue to be that contrarian. presenting the unpopular opinion, exiting the vox populi. Because the vox populi has led our people and our species into trouble time and time and time again. And we see this pattern of the rise and fall of civilizations. And I've talked about this for over a decade. And I do believe that we are at the end of this civilization, which is why they're rolling out the robots at the speed in which they are. It was last night in which I saw more talks again coming at a speed which I consider to be a little bit concerning. The implantable microchip. Whether it be the man that's implanting a chip under his skin to hold on to his Bitcoin, yes, this is news. Or whether it be another article nonchalantly that talks about a chip being implanted to prevent drinking and driving. Going from the breathalyzer to the implantable microchip. Yeah, let us pray, right? Let us pray for the male and female human of tomorrow that has not yet become a man, that has not yet become a woman of intelligence, to realize all these alcohol ads, all this shaky, shaky, shaky. You know, just like when I go into Portland, you know, there'll be that silhouette ad of the female with the big hooters but no head. And I'm like, where's the head? Come on now, where's the head? It's just a body with some hooters hanging out. Ain't that some animal crap? Try to watch my language here. Try to get some of these videos remonetized. Because no matter how many topics they flag, right, there's always a way. We may not be successful at it. It may take years to get it down, to speak the truth in code. Okay, so as we move into more dangerous times, more courage is needed. It takes courage for me to live in an area where people drive up, pause at a side street, and then let off a few rounds. You don't know whether that's target practice or somebody sending a message. Because most of the time it's target practice. It's just people doing people things for what's considered normal here. Whereas if that was done in your neighborhood, more than likely, it depends on how urban it is, 10 cop cars might show up with shots ringing out. Here it's just like coughing and sneezing. But more courage is needed to go into the world of 2020. And we can talk about what all those things are. But is that the real purpose? I think instead, right, we need to think about turning away from those things that weaken our energy field. Somebody made a recommendation once in the comment section about Manly Hall's lecture on YouTube about magnetic fields around the human body. And that's something that I came across at least as far back as 2012. I think it's one of his best lectures, although I'm not familiar with all of them, and I don't pay attention any longer to people that don't even pay attention to listen to certain people that demonize them because they may have been imperfect in some way without even realizing what they actually said. It's like David Icke being called a racist by the European Interpol terror organization. And then he can actually ask them, have you actually read my books? Right? And no, they actually haven't read his books. But he's been put into a category for a number of reasons. That's an example. And I'm doing that without necessarily defending everything that David Icke has done, but to show you an example. So we live in this world where we're also conditioned to be afraid of speaking our truth because we don't want to be pigeonholed. And there's so much energy, and especially online, which is where I'm going with this, that's wired towards this conflict. You know, a lot of people came up in this generation of the WWF. You know, the irony is, right? Watching that stuff's more real than watching modern politics. Some of those people like Macho Man and Hulk Hogan were actually feuding behind the scenes while actually feuding, ironically, on stage over somebody like Elizabeth. And then Macho Man would actually, the real Macho Man would actually be very protective and paranoid about Elizabeth. being looked at by the other wrestlers. That's why, listen to something like Jim Cornette talk about the reality outside the ring. And why is that more interesting than some of today's political commentary? Because it's more real. Because in that sense, Jim Cornette is telling the truth. Now, what if there was like a radio show that told the truth from the people that lived inside the White House or were inside the shadow government, that told the truth about the real relationship or friendships between particular politicians? Not what you read on paper, not what happens in the ring, not what happens on CNN, but what would be the relationship between, say, Alex Jones and the head of CNN and how they had lunch together and what went on at the party afterwards. Not how CNN presents Alex Jones and how Alex Jones presents CNN, right? But what went down between Alex Jones, right, and the executives at the party, right, of CNN. And I'm speculating. But see, it's like that with Jim Cornette. And they'll be talking about ravishing Rick Rude being, a very aggressive, one of the tougher wrestlers, kind of like Haku, that were legitimately dangerous and not just putting on a show, right? What if we knew the reality about these politicians without there just being a show or a mask? So it actually takes bravery and courage, a fearlessness to even seek these answers. And one thing about answers is one has to ask the question before receiving the answer. So if someone genuinely wants to know how the powers that be, I'll start using new language other than NWO, probably a very flagged phrase by now. But the powers that be, centralized control, how they maintain this centralized control and the illusion of one nation being at war with another nation. Sure, they may be firing weapons at each other in preparation for a great manufactured man and woman against man and woman to reduce the population of the earth, but that doesn't mean that the powers that be, the heads of state of the United States, the heads of state of China, the heads of state of Russia, that doesn't actually mean that Trump and Putin and Xi are at odds at all. It's like in plain sight. They show you clues. They show you handshakes. They show you rituals of the hands over the globe. And then to your face, lie to you. It is like a cosmic practical joke from the Creator. It is like the Creator is allowing everything to happen here, and there are no accidents. And everyone has been shown the truth years in advance. And that would be the ultimate practical joke, that everything would be in plain sight, that souls would show what they were made of, whether they were aligned with the light, whether they cared about protecting and serving that which the Creator created, or whether they're going to be on the side of destruction, the illusions of separation, demonizing those forms of life that came from the Creator as not pretty enough, not good enough. So we are incrementally moving back into the Dark Ages. Okay, we would see opposite. We would be seeing opposite effects if this was not the case. We would be seeing more unity within our society. Forget the government and forget social media. I'm talking about you and me. I'm talking about real people. Is it anything like that type of unity that we felt, even if it was an illusion, but in those years after 9/11? Is it anything like that? People are united by their sense of tribe and gang more than anything else today. Whether we're looking at Antifa in cities like Portland, Oregon, or whether we're looking at the other side of the political pendulum. Look at how people are motivated to watch things that include people that they believe that they hate, how people enjoy hating, how channels will grow on YouTube if they're about hating a particular group. There were people protesting in Portland, and somebody on the megaphone was yelling and screaming, and he was confronted by somebody else who is a convenient target in today's day and age. So the people in the comment section were berating the person based on his perception of ethnicity because he had the gall to challenge the protester who was espousing values that the YouTube commenters in that particular demographic were in support of. So instead of it actually being about the dialogue, about what was upsetting the person that was walking by, that was hearing the person on the megaphone take over the streets with his rhetoric, what he had to say wasn't important. But see, what he looked like, right, and the origins of the sperm that helped create him, that seemed to have a much higher precedence than what the man was actually saying. This is an example of the illusions of separation, when the conversation should be about what's being said and whether what's being said is accurate or not, or whether it's inciting. And if someone is a proponent of free speech, then they shouldn't be against someone else using their free speech to say, I disagree with you. Saying, I disagree with you, shouldn't automatically be responded to with calls for horrible things to happen to that person using their free speech. Now, I'm more or less commenting on what I see happening to others. And I wish I can warn some of these people that are ignorant, about the internet when they get into these political confrontations, right, in the streets. They may not realize that there is like a whole global world of armchair intellectuals that aren't at either side of the protest, that now live online to feed on the negative energies being created by others with this technology that our ancestors did not have. How much more evolved are we then than a monkey? If it is monkey see, monkey do, and there isn't like a higher expression of consciousness, listen, if someone has something enlightening to share or spiritual, they should be able to say it with their own vocal cords. For spirituality now, to talk about that, not so much political infighting, right? But for people to popularize the idea of a robot seer, or a robot taking fake channel messages and then repeating those fake channel messages, or other alleged spiritual messages like the YouTube channel Higher Self, and they put out a robot to where there could be 10,000, 50,000 people watching one video because they prefer the robot spiritual teacher. Now, I want you to think about this, and I've alluded to this before. The spiritual robot guru, in the day and age of the bots that people make love to, and I think that's a flag word as well. You can't talk about the bots. Take a look at what happened to some channels that made some popular videos about the bots and see how the bot on YouTube responding to those videos about the bots that some people want to fornicate with. And continuing on, we see the human voice of reason in the wilderness naturally being flagged. Even to the point where we wonder whether the intensity and humanity of our voices, the expression of emotion, is this not advertiser friendly? Is this contributing? Is it the emotion that explodes from my voice? The sense of humanity, the sense of concern that I have for humanity in the day and the age of the robot apocalypse. Is this what's holding me back? By the way, if there was an Alex Ansary that told you everything that you wanted to hear, that wore the suit and tie, that sold you the marked up products, what would that look like? That tried to upsell the appetizers at Olive Garden before you sat down and tried to get you to order that plate of fried JoJo's that might be renamed something Italiano, yeah, for like $9.95, and you could finish it in about 3 minutes with your wife and your screaming child. And I'm just using my imagination. Like, what would be best for you? I'm just being comical. For myself, what's best for my own evolution is to be true to one's own self. So there's truth that I can access on the internet, and there's truth that I can output on the internet. But to live on the internet full time, and I talked about this at Patreon on my first podcast, the goals. What's the agenda here? Well, it's more than I can't really afford it at this point, because the YouTube AdSense is sliding down into the 100s. So I just can't afford to have internet anymore. I just can't afford to do anything with any money anymore other than land payments for the month. Maybe next month or a week will change. I also had to pay $140 in taxes just recently, and I spread that payment out over 2 months. So it's more than saving money; it's clarity of thought. I haven't even gone fully into this thought, and I won't until the internet is no longer here. But the effect of going off grid and not immersing myself in one particular common off grid activity that others may enjoy, being okay with no allies for hundreds of miles to thousands, literally, and realizing that I'm not alone spiritually, and you're not alone spiritually, and there's a blessing in the idea of having your own space, but it does require courage. Some people without a particular arsenal would not live here after hearing the amount of ammunition going off. They would have their own arsenal. They wouldn't just be up here with a microphone and a camera as a primary, putting like absolute faith in the Creator. So even if it's not looked at today as something of value, to me it is a spiritual experience to turn over to the Creator and to live it and to show it. Think about the Pope going down, right? And he has all these so-called believers, and he apparently is a believer or a top servant of God, if you will. And yet he has bulletproof glass. He has bulletproof glass. What do I got? I'm not comparing myself to the Pope, but I am a human being in a particular part of America that seems like it's getting rowdier on a social level once you interact with people, even if it's a smaller population community. And it's like, in some cases, something out of an old A-Team episode. What's going on and up some of these hills. And to turn to spirit, to turn to the Creator, and put out affirmations. Each time I go to town, my car is going to drive without breaking down, because I've had some serious bad luck, because I don't know any mechanics up here. So there were periods in which there were long periods between the car running and not running, to where I was stuck on my land for months without a single ride to town for resources. That changes a person. And someone could fall into the abyss of despair and even cry out about it and lose, right, what remaining allies they had. Or people go, hey, what's wrong with that guy? Oh, you can't stand your land for months and months and months without a ride to town? You're a weakling. But that actually makes you become stronger. And it's like, yes, that is the goal here. To be able to be 100% independent from a need for someone else. Now, how do we go beyond the need for a car to work? I'm not there yet, folks. Maybe one day, once I have like a bicycle set up, I will be. But I'll tell you, it's a stepping stone. So next to the faith that's applied to, yes, I'm just going to, throw it all down. I've had divine intervention in my life before. I'm not going to stop having faith now because there's a few challenges. And I've come to learn that every one of these challenges, not seeing anyone that I know for months to a year, type of a thing, and all of my relationships being on the internet, it creates a certain type of discipline and dealing with the negativity on the internet, you know, most people, they have a life outside of the internet in their community to balance out whatever type of negativity that they're dealing with on the internet as a public person. And that was more prevalent in my life in Portland, kind of like an outlet, even if I wasn't seeing anyone, to walk around running water or to walk through town. You know, I was having Portland memories. It's hard not to have memories of the place you were born and where you lived most of your life, you know, and those parts of the city that I do miss, but there's still addictions. And there's references to rising above addictions to this book, Handbook for Higher Consciousness, which I picked up at the thrift store by Ken Keyes Jr. And it talks about some of that in the first part. But I started talking about addictions to the city that we struggle with when I first went off the grid. Thanks to a friend at the time that pointed me in the direction of Costilla County. And so for me, it was stepping back from the pizza parlors, stepping back from the bright lights. For myself, it was stepping back from my TV show. It wasn't a full ego loss or dissolve, because I'm not like going to walk away from talking to you and just go off in the desert and just sit in silence. That's not me. But will I go off into the desert away from a bunch of people and flip on a camera? Now that is me. And I think that was weird for a lot of people to see over the years. Like, who do you think you are? Acting like there's some value to the things that you're saying. You know, why are you questioning some of these consensus realities? You know, why are you speaking against this Democrat Party, this Republican Party, mainstream way of thinking? You know, why are you saying you're independent, yet you have a different view than Alex Jones? How can you be independent? Well, it takes some years for people to understand that he has never really represented the independent. And he is relevant to the conversation, being that he was an inspiration for me to get involved. So it always becomes relevant when I correct myself in 2018 and say the people that I used to promote, I now see that we're on different sides. And I think some of these people are intelligence assets of the intelligence community. And that there is something that connects China, Russia, and the United States on an intelligence level that the American people know nothing about when they're just thinking the CIA. They don't know that there's an overlap agency. And I believe that there is. I believe that there is. This is not something that you're going to find on websites. This is my speculation. Everything that I've speculated ultimately has turned out to be accurate. Everything. And the rest of it is like an argument with people online, you know, which is unnecessary, or repeating myself. And I realize, you know, one has to speak their own truth without an expectation that people will get it in this generation and society. And it's taken me years to understand this. It's like now I'm understanding it more. It's more important for us to change the mind of our prisoner mind while we're in the prison. We may not have the power to change the entire prison, or the factors and conditions that led our soul to remain in this prison planet reality. I believe that there is this reality, and this reality is a fallen one. And there are other ways, other realities beyond this one, if there's something to get motivated about. You know, just like one of those, there's so many YouTube motivational speeches, you know, to realize your dreams and realize your goals and fill in the blank here. But what if we applied that same passion to evolving beyond the prison planet, you know, and you making that decision now, in your soul, in your heart, that you seek knowledge, that you ask that knowledge find you, that will help set you free. You have that power. And I have that power. And when people give up their power, is when they're looking to people in politics, they're saying, I really hate that guy, or I really like that guy. Well, does it really matter whether you like that guy or hate that guy? Are you giving that guy your power, your hate, your love? And see, the higher consciousness within you that can hear me right now realizes you're responsible for your own actions. No one else is. You're responsible for your own consciousness. You're responsible for your own life. You get to decide, unless you're on probation, where you live in the United States. Sometimes we move to a new place in the United States thinking that we're moving there to experience a certain thing, only to realize that the challenges were not destined to go away. Maybe some challenges were, but for new challenges to open up, that we would be destined to overcome. So I didn't know all the challenges that I would face coming here. I knew what challenges that I was overcoming. Now that I understand the challenges that I'm facing here, I see the benefits of overcoming those challenges and not being a victim and coming out the other side in a few years and coming out a survivor in a few years somehow feels like it's changing me into the person that I'm going to be. And on an obvious level, that's more independent, but on a deeper level, less dependent on support from people in my community for the things that I do, for the videos that I create. It was a really big deal, in a way, for me to move away from a city where there may have been some support from the local demographic for an independent, non-Democrat, non-Republican viewpoint, to go off the grid to where it wouldn't be supported at all, to where the only people that do listen or support are far, far away. Although there are some people that do listen locally, collecting information, keeping tabs, things of that nature. I just hope simply that they're learning something. You know, they may have been drawn in going, watch that guy. We're suspicious of that guy. Watch that guy. But ultimately, let's talk about why are we led to certain places on the planet? And why do we face the challenges that we face? And are we cognitive enough of those challenges to work through those challenges, or are we staying stuck? And could be unstucking ourselves be the ultimate strategy to moving our life forward? You know, I'd like to be on a boat again. I'd like to see the beach. I'd like to travel. I'd like to have a book in my hands about my life and every major occurrence in my life, including here off the grid. It's an ongoing off the grid journal that I'm keeping. And there's a bunch of intense stuff that's happened. Also, the benefit of keeping a journal is looking at certain periods that were really difficult on us, really painful, and going, I survived that. That's like nothing today, a year later. We can also experience the power of our thought. I believe in the law of attraction. I also believe people use the law of attraction to bully others that are being victimized in this world or being bombed out of existence, or people that are homeless. Oh, you want to be homeless because you thought about being homeless, so now you're homeless. Like we have a lot of cruel people in the world that like to attach themselves to law of attraction philosophies just to verbally beat up on others. So being able to distinguish is key, because I don't hear typical people distinguishing. You know, because one of the things I've also learned is not everything that you fear, right, is going to come into your life. That's BS. What if you're being protected for something specific? You know, think about all the fears that you've had in your life that never came true. Would that number be beyond 100? So the question would be, why did your fears not manifest? Were you just not thinking enough about them? Think about those things that you may have worried about your entire life that never happened. So what's preventing those things from happening? I would say it's universal law. Universal law is preventing those things from happening. Or natural law. You may have a destiny to meet someone at a certain time to receive some information that your soul is here to receive. Just by being a little irresponsible with your thoughts alone, right, isn't enough to reroute your entire life's purpose. So it's really a combination of factors. And this world of like left, right, like the polarity, there's actually like a divide on whether or not we have free will or whether everything is destined, with only a minority of the population that can actually see a counterbalance between the idea of destiny and the idea of free will, which I call the wild card. We all have this wild card where, sure, we may have a certain destiny, but all the while we have a free will, whether we're going to go along with that and be aligned with where we should be, or whether we're going to go out and make certain mistakes. And who's to say that those things were even mistakes? If I had not, had early legal problems that would lead to an entire adulthood without a legal right to the Second Amendment, then how would I have this much faith in the Creator? Not a firearm. I live a different way than most humans. I live more like someone 1,000 years ago in some ways than someone today. I may not be doing all the homesteading. I may have replaced all the homesteading with talking to you. Now, if you don't want me talking to you, that's fine. You just listen to another YouTube channel. But I have an interest in see people grow and evolve as souls, where it seems that some of my peers are working for special interests that want your soul. And so there's a purpose in what I'm doing. And there's obviously a purpose in me going down a certain road that would mark me. Oh, that guy's a criminal. Oh, you can't trust that guy, to then have to build myself up all over again in my 20s. Redefining myself, aligning myself with, it's like the metamorphosis of who I was to come was on autopilot. All that was needed for me to find some kind of a bottom, not even that much of a bottom, but just something that I would identify to a bottom and go, oh, I don't like this place. I feel stuck. I feel like I wasted the last year of my life. And then be at that spot. And then with the events of 9/11 and the spiritual epiphanies within me, there was something within me that just knew. And I knew that I knew. And that was its own epiphany. That was its own lightning strike on the prairie. And then from there, it began. See, so a lot of people can't identify how 9/11 and waking up to the truth about that can lead someone into a deeper spiritual journey. I just got to say this briefly. There's a lot of people that say that they're on that journey on Facebook. And the question is, if we're just living on the internet all day long, how are we really awakening? How are we really awakened if that's where they want us? Looking at an LCD screen, looking into the false light. You know, yesterday I was doing some exercises, breathing exercises, while standing on a giant log on my property that I took the bark off of so I can walk on it barefoot, do some horse stances, be in a more meditative posture while in certain stances. And while I never officially learned certain styles or yoga, I've always been kind of turned off by a lot of yoga teachers and the American yoga culture, which seems to kind of like a buffet. Take what you want and leave the rest, like leave the spirituality and leave that and go for the vanity. So for myself, there's a part of me that is in a state of remembering. It's not just about these political truths or ideas about the matrix. It's body positions. It's martial arts movements or things that I may see or experience in this lifetime that actually seems to remind me of another time and space, or another place in space, or another time in reality, whether it be this reality here on earth, in the past, maybe even the present, or another reality beyond the earth. Certain things, certain experiences, certain people, certain personalities, certain things I come across on the internet, they assist me on some level in remembering. And so that's something that I wanted to express. At the same time, certain core images that they want to implant in us through their mass mind control, through the TV, through YouTube, through the internet, This has an opposite, adverse effect. There's remembering who we are, and there's forgetting who we are, and being implanted with a false sense of who we are, more superior than others, more inferior than others. Pick your flavor, right? Pick your mind control. Pick your illusions of separation. Because illusions of separation and this whole duality is still, we're in the same ballpark of conversation. So the opposite of remembering who you are is forgetting who you are. And with the internet today, they can do that. They can recreate your idea of self. Your instincts wanting to be around a tribe that will protect you and that you're protecting can be rewired. Those somewhat healthy, normal, sometimes I lately are mixing two words into one. It'll come out like that, northy. But a healthy, normal inclination to be around good people or your people can be perverted. They can pervert in this fallen matrix who your people are and who the evil ones are, while the hidden hand controls how deep you go into debt, or the nation goes into debt, while a hidden hand orchestrates amongst the world leaders, China, Russia, the United States, and the rest. But I always start with those. People can have their history lessons about the UK all they want. But right now, we're dealing with like this potential outcome of the United States having to take on both China and Russia, even if there are European countries behind the scenes that are orchestrating things. And see, this is being orchestrated by forces that people don't even know anything about. And if they really did, then their understanding of their fellow tribal members that are really a part of their tribe would go beyond their current understanding. They would see reality as it is. The idea of someone's character, not their skin tone, having value and merit would be a more important issue in their lives. It wouldn't be just something from Martin Luther King Jr. It would be something that we understand. And it isn't until people see the unconsciousness in most ethnic groups that they stay away from superiority. They could see one group acting like supremacists and then see another group as the victims. But when they actually look at the nature of what we're doing here as souls and human bodies, we could see that there's a reason why many of us are here on this type of a planet with this many illusions of separation. People may be harmed to a certain degree within this physical world, but are we victims for even being here on the earth? And I say the answer is no, that we're here for a reason. And we might even be aided by the universe in powerful ways that we do not know, while we're facing enormous challenges, because we're here to show our courage. We're here to express our bravery. We're here with an opportunity to use YouTube to say things that are controversial that others will argue with, because it's their role to argue with us. If we were speaking a truth that was mainstream, or speaking something that was mainstream, we wouldn't be facing opposition. What is mainstream in today's society? It's the military-industrial complex. What is mainstream in today's economy? It is borrowing more money from China so we can prop up our economy. And whether we're talking about the current administration or the previous administration, more borrowed money, more borrowed time. Borrowed time before what? See, now I've gone full circle. I've interviewed a person like Leon Legant to still see a number of people ignore that, even on the left, that are adamantly or admittedly concerned about Russia. To them, I will still be a right-wing conspiracy freak that talks about archons and stuff. And so a man like me has made his own bed. As I look down at this bed that I humbly sleep on a few inches of foam mattress. And sometimes I don't even have enough to keep all my propane tanks full. So I may be basically skipping, if you will, on the amount of time that the Mr. Buddy heater is on, because I got to keep that budget to a certain amount. And so other people can feel like victims and see themselves in poverty And I'm here to tell you, if I can do this, you can do certain things. The reason I jumped into this with both feet, and now I'm looking at disconnecting the internet, not just because I can't afford it at the end of the month, the $67, not after taxes this year, not after other expenses, not after the fall of my YouTube AdSense to now $180 a month. And so I'm just going to tell it to you like it is. You know, I'm living this way of life, stepping back from the influence of the internet, taking like the idea of the ego death slowly, one step forward. It was one thing to step away from my online support group in the Oregon area. But I obviously had to face those hardships of not having a home that last year to set me free from the cords that I had with Portland, the city in which I was born in. City in which positive relationships, some of them with women, were had, some were not so beneficial, but it's like there are some positive memories there, but also a lot of pain. And so like a song from Aerosmith or something, running away from the pain, yeah, run away, only to find you could hear people literally in the forest joking about harming and sexually defiling Iranians, like I did last year when I was invited somewhere over by beers, for beers. And that was a very distressing thing to realize that thinking was so close to my actual residence. Not only is it in the far fringe of the American right, it's literally where I moved to. More so here than anywhere else that I know of in Colorado. Costia County is a very, very different, wide open space where you have space from others. So I found somewhere that I can rest, but I also found myself psychologically, psychically, energetically challenged. Knowing that you can run away, right? And run right into that same type of attitude. But yet, be kept alive for a few years to continue speaking this truth to those of you. Because, you know, those few meals I may have served at a restaurant, none of you think about those things. What you think about is what Alex is talking about. Not how Alex poured your water. Not whether Alex's apron at a restaurant somewhere had stains in it or not. You only come to this YouTube channel to hear the dialogue and free thought, open thought, outside the box dialogue. Even if you keep coming back and back and back to argue with the content, you're the one that keeps coming back for more. And I'm the one that refuses to cater to one single audience member to redirect the content. Even if I'm at levels, audience levels, that I was at 2013, which is distressing. I understand that that is the machine. You know, the machine rates my channel as a D- on YouTube. Like, there are ratings. There's a bunch of other incorrect information as well in these so-called algorithms. And ways in which the bots create more problems for the humans. But ultimately, we have been given the minds, many people have been given the minds of the androids. And they've lost their humanity. They've lost their connection with nature. They don't realize that having a smartphone with them all the time is a big step in the transhumanistic agenda. Being able to be contacted by anyone at all times, in the matrix, in the machine, to not have distance from that type of courting, is a representation of the steps towards transhumanism that many are taking in their personal lives. So I could really continue on, and I'm going to. I'm going to continue on and on as the weeks go on. Looking forward to seeing the first friend that I've seen in a long, long time. Coming up to visit, working on some podcasts, working on some videos, cooking some food, watching some movies, and then having the internet disconnected, and then driving to town in some sort of a ritual of sorts. Well, some people's whole lives might be marked by plowing wheat, right? Farming, right? Hard work. There's also hard work that I'm going to do off the grid to bring you content without having that instantaneous reward mechanism of your feedback and being able to see it the same day or the next day. At the same time, I am thinking about a forum. If you want to reach out and ask to be led into the forum, I'm not doing anything with it, but once we get like 5 serious people together, so far there are no serious people that are saying they want to be in the forum. But the forum on Discord has already been created. So there's ways that I can be found on social media. Once we get 5 serious people that don't have an interest in doing pranks or things of that nature, but serious dialogue. Some people are capable of holding a full conversation, writing more than one paragraph, using complete sentences, not having extreme bipolar issues, to where they're fairly consistent with their personality type. And, I do think that these solar flares and full moons and things like that are affecting things on a big, big way. And with that and the rollout of 5G, especially with the rollout of 5G, I think that it's going to have a greater impact on human consciousness. And so there's a reason why I've sought to step back from the signal. And if you've ever seen the movie They Live, then you're aware then that there is within the plot, the theme of Roddy Piper putting on the sunglasses and seeing the subliminals that he normally wasn't able to see. And how a signal being put out by the media was keeping people in a oscillated state of sleep. Almost like psychological sleep paralysis. And there are a lot more people that are reporting the ringing of the ears. I am, and I'm off the grid. My friend is that lives in Texas. She's experiencing the ringing of the ears. And yet, out of all these religions and all these Hollywood movies and just this inner knowing that we are not alone in the universe, we're at a level of collective consciousness that people co-sign each other's bull BS, that they're being gang-stalked by the U.S. government, instead of that sense of being followed, being sourced from something else. I would say that one thing that a lot of these TIs haven't experienced that they probably should is a period of time without electronics. A period of time off the grid. A period of time in which they're not checking Facebook. A period of time in which they're writing a book about their life. A period of time in which they're reading books. And even if they're reading books, some garlic just fell here. Garlic is good for multiple reasons, eating and other. There's a reason why it exists in vampire lore, in fiction. But garlic has also been used as a means of spiritual protection. And there are other means of spiritual protection and healthier ways of living, healthier ways of sleeping that I'm working to cultivate and adapt. Like sitting outside for a few minutes reading a book during a certain period in which the sun is rising. Being spontaneous, like maybe today I may go hiking, I may go walking, and then I'll look outside and see how intense the geoengineering is. And if it's a clear day like today, I may just take a gamble and do that. Or it's like, for me, someone that associates with the idea of not being gang stalked, but the idea of feeling watched, feeling interference in my own life. It's taken years of dedicated focus and interest into what helps the situation, right? And what aggravates the situation. And I'll tell you what, putting out videos about Archon, psychic self-defense, to the general public on YouTube aggravates the situation. If that happens to be one of the topics that you appreciate and you support my work, follow-up commentaries on that will be at VHX. Now, if you want to sign up today, or if you want to sign up in the next few days, if you determine that I'm worth $5.95 per month for private members only area. And if you want regular updates on that, I'd like to see more interest. I'd like to see more than 2 viewers. And right now, it's an awkward time. The on-demand channel, outsidethebox.vhx.tv, has been around since February, and I see a value in sharing more of my soul with you, the elements of the audience that actually care about that message. And I don't see any value in bearing that level of my soul and my knowledge to other elements of the audience that aren't on a friendly tone, that watch for data collection and other reasons. And so for those of you that truly appreciate that content, I just want to remind you why that's not on YouTube anymore, and you only have old content, is because I've already shared with you the bulk of what I have to share as far as my current off-grid experiences that are a little bit specific, personal, not the business of everybody on the internet. Updates, right, on my experience with psychic attack and dream invasion and periods in which I'm stronger or weaker. Now I see how a speaker who also deals with the targeting should curtail what information is made public about them, as well as the advances, if you will, in my own ability to override particular programs or mind control. Because we're all, if you will, TIs on this earth, if you were born into human form. It's not about the government. We're part of a larger program where, you know, you watch a Vice documentary or you watch certain things on TIs. In some cases, it's psychosis caused by mental illness, which can be induced by those same archonic forces. Someone could be induced to develop a psychosis to destroy their own life and relationships around them by developing theories that innocent people around them are involved in a gang stalking program, when in reality they are being stalked, but not by their mother, not by their sister, and not by the people at work. But if you can condition an entire segments of a society to develop those symptoms, and remember there's different variants of it. So some people might think that they're being gang stalked by one group. Somebody may think that his neighbor really is plotting to put a hijiba on him from something he read online or something that may have happened to somebody else. And that may become his reality for several years, where that's all that's taking place, where there is no $1 trillion in debt. There is no potential war with China and China's counteractions to Donald Trump. There is no any of that. There's only the neighbor and what the neighbor might be thinking and what the neighbor might be doing. And this seems to be the blueprint for maybe even the entire earth. Right now, I'm just thinking about the United States and things that are being reported within the English language, the only language that I know of or can speak, at least in this life, at least that I know of. However, if I was to hear the translations or know exactly what's being said in households across the planet, I believe from this moment that I'm speaking to you now that I would hear more of this psychosis about what the neighbor's doing or what the church is doing down the street or what the Jews are doing or what the whites are doing or what the blacks are doing or what that group's doing or what the men are doing or what the women are doing or not doing for us, etc., 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 fill in the blank here. But if you were to zoom out beyond old language, beyond pitiful human thought, and just see the totality of all the human thoughts and energies, you would see a wholeness. You would see a group at war with itself, consciously. You would see a collective fallen consciousness, maybe even a fallen soul group family at war with itself. Babbling, the Tower of Babel. Babbling, trolling, attacking, not appreciating. Voices in the head, whether it be voice-to-skull technology from the actual government or whether it be voices in the head from something that will never be traced and will never be proven by humans. Because it's beyond. There are certain things that come from the unseen realms. So I'm going to wrap things up. Please join Patreon if you enjoy podcasts like this. If you, right, see value in a few dollars a month, right, a couple cups of coffee, going to somebody like me, right, and knowing that you're contributing to that on an energetic level as you're receiving, that's awesome. And that's the type of thing that can help me survive what's happening on YouTube. Because I don't want to do clickbait. I don't want to think for a few hours what would be the headline that the machine is going to like. I'm only concerned with content that's going to help the majority, because I can't help them all. I'm only interested in creating philosophical commentary that the majority of my audience will benefit from. But there's ways you can help me make more of that content, and I've laid out those parameters.